All right, let's talk really quick about data management. This begins on like page 94 in our book. So, informatics, right? This is just what we're going to use as to talk about the collection, classification, storage, retrieval, and dissemination of any kind of recorded information that was recorded with a computer, right? Informatics. We use a whole bunch of different kinds of informatics. And that translates into you're going to have a whole lot of usernames and passwords to remember in the course of your career as a technologist or nuclear medicine weirdo, right? I'm just teasing. So there's hospital information systems. This is going to be a hospital-specific information system, right? There's clinical information systems. This is going to be like the stuff that we use, like Trajexis, to manage clinical data. Or also things that, for instance, like the way that a EKG is recorded, right? Or the way a blood value is recorded. That would be like a clinical information. There's also these computerized physician order systems. Fortunately, we don't have to see them very often, but this is going to be a way that that facilitates the physician to place orders. These can make our lives a living nightmare, in all honesty, because the physician, if they don't know how to use the system, it can be very difficult to get in touch with the physician, or they may be inappropriately ordering things. So I would encourage you to figure out ways to identify if you're using a computerized physician order system, right? And whether to differentiate between an order that was actually manually entered by a physician or a nurse versus one that was dictated into one of these systems, right? There normally is a way to differentiate between how they were ordered. A lot of times it'll have like a general physician's name who will appear under those orders, but they are not fun. And then here's some just generic terms for digital patient records. We might hear electronic health record like an EHR or an EMR. So what's the one they rolled out at Baptist last year? Epic, right? Epic would be an EMR, right? And one of the reasons they rolled it out last year is because these are required now by the Affordable Care Act, right? They want ways to make sure that we're electronically maintaining patient records for ease of communication and also for oversight. So, the key elements of radiology informatics, y'all probably are already familiar with, like a RIS, a radiology information system. This a lot of times is underneath the umbrella of the EMR. There'll be a separate RIS, and it's just a way to tag orders to images and PACS, right? And our PACS is our picture archiving and communication system. So at Baptist we use McKesson, right? Be aware of the fact that there's a whole bunch of different PACS out there. There's good ones and bad ones, right? Just like there's a whole bunch of different EMRs out there. There's good ones and bad ones. The one that from the facility that I just came from in Austin, they bought an EMR that was originally created to maintain records at a single dentist office, right? And then that company that when the Affordable Care Act was first being rolled out, there was government cheese available for people who created EMRs. Right? There was like $1 million or $2 million available for creating an EMR. And so everyone and their brother who had a dentist office, EMR system that they had, programmed on their home computer went in for that government cheese. So there are really good ones out there. Like honestly, Epic is one of the better ones out there. And then there's some real stinkers. Ones that probably will not pass the government muster for the next kind of rounds of what they expect these EMRs to do. And yet they still were able to market them to healthcare systems. I'll get off my soapbox. So PACS fundamentals is networking. We're just talking about a way to network. They're going to provide some kind of digital image format standard, right? The way that these things are annotated and the way that they're stored and sent. They allow us to acquire images and send them around to different places. there's going to be workstations at which we will access them, right? And then there's going to be a huge server mainframe somewhere where, hopefully at your facility's campus, where the data is stored and can be distributed from that point. So, a network is just basically anywhere that 2 or more computers are gathered, right? And there's a bunch of different ways that we can configure networks. Back in the 90s, we had LAN parties where we would just sit around and eat cheese dip and kill each other in third-person shooter games, right? They were amazing times of brotherhood and love. But local area networks are what are occurring with those. Wide area networks are what we see sometimes in a bigger facility, perhaps something like our college. There's wired networks and there's also wireless networks. So a lot of what we're dealing with now is wireless, right? Unfortunately, in the healthcare environment, we're pretty much stuck in the 1990s because of HIPAA, right? In all honesty, there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to run my CT scanner with my cell phone. It should be Bluetooth enabled, and I should be able to pretty much do contrast injection and etc. from my cell phone. The technology is there. Maybe the ethics aren't completely there, but the technology is there. The reason that we do not do it, though, goes back to HIPAA and also patient care, in interest of patient care. It might not be a good thing if I'm running the CT scanner off of my cell phone while I'm sitting back drinking coffee and vaping on my e-cigarette or whatever. I knew a CT tech who did that. Not with the cell phone, but with the e-cigarette. So, perhaps common in the PACS setting is a client-server network, right? So we're going to have a big server and then little clients all over the place. That just means that there's going to be a PACS icon on your desktop. You don't actually have all the information in that computer. You have a client that allows you to access the server. And computers in this model are either servers or clients. They're not both. It's either or, right? And the server is going to be hidden away in some very, very cold room somewhere where you probably are not allowed to take soda pop and chips, right? So generally people don't hang around in the server room. It needs to be a fairly sterilized environment so that we don't get dust in the server and lose all our information. And then the server is going to act on requests from any of the computers in the network, clients, rather than a person sitting there in the server room telling it what to do. Okay. One really, really critical thing is the network bandwidth, and this is just the amount of data that can be transmitted between 2 points. So we have all this information in the server and not very much information at the client, but there's like a little tiny pipe between them, right? And that pipe is going to limit how quickly the information can be passed. One of the things that we can do, and this is kind of the cutting edge of where Silicon Valley is right now, is compression, right? How do we compress this material information in a way such that it can be transmitted more efficiently? Compression is kind of the name of the game right now. So, the way that we typically transmit the data from our PACS system to clients is with a DICOM. It's going to be some kind of digital imaging and communication system. It's a very, very specific form of encoding digital information, medical information, so that it cannot be like universally viewed. So every single PACS manufacturer is going to have their own DICOM code, right? And that can make our lives difficult when we're trying to facilitate communication between different PACS systems, right? There's a whole lot of human user-based entry that might have to go on if we were to change our PACS. I was at a facility that changed its PACS system 3 times. It was a massive pain. So if there ever is talk at your facility about changing PACS, start screaming and saying no, and maybe even looking for another job, because it's a lot of work and a lot can get lost in the process. So unless there's a very good reason why they're changing their PACS, know that DICOM DICOM is going to become the very next word that comes into your vocabulary. HL7 is the way that the DICOM interfaces with the individual machine, right? So there's very specific HL7. HL7 is a universal kind of language, which is nice because any machine like my CT scanner that's up to snuff should be already ready to transmit things over the HL7, right? Then once it gets to PACS, that's when it's going to start being DICOM encoded. So the nice thing is I can send information from my GE scanner just about anywhere in the world as long as I have accessibility to it. And that HL7 is going to allow for that. The DICOM is what kind of specifically encodes it and protects it for that environment. There have been difficulties with getting HL7 to communicate with the EMR, right? And this goes back to the cheap dentist office EMRs. Sometimes they can't push orders to the scanner. So even though you have this high-tech electronic medical record system, you're still manually entering information into your scanner, right? Do y'all see that at any of your facilities? Hopefully not. That's because, again, Epic is a good EMR, and it's fully capable to do HL7 communication to the scanners. Okay. CT is an inherently digital modality. And pretty much everything that CT does, it's already doing it to be communicated to PACS and stored in a DICOM or communicated in a DICOM format. So this allows for really, really good spatial resolution and image manipulation capabilities because it's not like I'm taking a CT scan and then scanning that into my computer through a photo scanner, right? There are analog methods of doing CT communication. We can grab a frame. We can do a screenshot, right? I can take a picture with my phone, right? That would be basically an analog way of doing it. But it's going to be inferior to that digital method just because we're going to lose some information. Okay. The number one place that big data is growing is within medicine, right? And CT departments are kind of at the forefront of generating a tremendous amount of data, a whole lot of information. So archiving is critical right now. Figuring out ways to save a whole lot of image data and to store it for a really long time. So generally only the image data is stored. So devices are kind of broadly classified as online, and that would mean they're instantly accessible to the user. Nearline, which means you could plug it in. It might be there, it might be not. And then offline. And this is going to, anything offline is going to require like a manual connection. Like I think again about the EKG machine. It may not be connected to the hospital's EMR. I might have to access the EKG machine, do my test, and then scan that report into the EMR. Right, because it's offline. It requires manual access. Nearline, I think about my Kindle. I take it off of. I apply airplane mode if I don't want the library knowing that I've checked out a book, right? Because then I can read the book as long as I want, and it's not going to remove the book from my Kindle. And then online is what we are most of the time. So let's review real quick. Data stored on a CT hard drive is classified as what would we call that? Yeah, I believe that's what it's going to be. Yeah. Two more slides. So there's a bunch of different ways we can store this stuff. We have, CDs, DVDs, Blu-ray discs. I haven't seen Blu-rays being used very much in medicine because, again, we're kind of stuck in the 90s when it comes to this technology. And I still have seen a lot of magnetic tape. There's a lot of CT scanners out there that use magnetic tape, right? And it's going to be one of the only places you see these big magnetic tape spool things for storing data. It's a good way to store the amount of information that we need to store and still be able to access it, right? So a lot of CT departments, they'll have a magnetic tape library that's specific to that scanner. So if, for instance, they changed their PAC system and something got lost, well, we still have it on the magnetic tape. Interestingly enough, space shuttles use magnetic tape systems for storage because CDs spin so fast. Blu-ray discs spin so fast that it could actually affect the trajectory of the space shuttle, right? So they use magnetic tape still to store information on space shuttles because it can store a lot of information, it can be retrieved, and it doesn't spin. So, final thing, let's just talk about image distribution. PACS is going to be used to get the correct images to the correct location in the shortest possible time. You have to be on that PACS though. I can't be on a different PACS and looking for a patient's information over here. I know that sounds stupid, but I've seen people do it too many times, right? I need to make sure that I'm on the right PACS. The internet's increasingly being used for image transfer. I mean, that's like, duh. I mean, the internet is pretty much all of what we're doing for patient transfer, especially like in the operating rooms or anytime we're communicating information between facilities. We're using McKesson, a McKesson client that's an online client, right? We can even pull up the images on our cell phone now. There's apps for it. Anytime we're doing any kind of image distribution, though, there has to be some kind of security device. So there's firewalls, passwords, usernames, secure sockets, layers, virtual private networks, specific apps, specific languages, all of that stuff, right? To define who the users are that can access that. And that, again, goes back to HIPAA, but then also back to kind of the cutting edge of information security. All right, that's it.